Hello there and welcome to another week in Nintendo Land, the podcast where we round up all the latest Nintendo news and discuss it at great length and probably too much detail. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Treehouse Presentation, which revealed closer looks at gameplay for Pikmin 3 Deluxe and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, as well as Splatoon 2's new event Splatoween and Overwatch going free to play for a week. And here to talk about it all, we've got the best of the best from Switch Player Magazine. First of all, we've got the gang back together. Anna and Nathan have returned. Guys, welcome.
Glad to be back.
Good to have you back. It's lovely to have you here again. And he was so good last week. We've got him back again. It's Ninty Fresh and Switch Player's creative editor, Mr. Jon Doyle.
Thanks for having me again.
Well, thank you for coming back. Obviously, it wasn't so bad last time, so it's
fine.
So I'm sure we're all very excited to talk about everything that's been happening this week in the world of Nintendo. But before we do, here's a quick reminder of all the news that's been making headlines this week. On Tuesday, Nintendo released a Treehouse presentation revealing gameplay for both Pikmin 3 Deluxe and Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. At the end of the month, Splatoon 2 is bringing back its Halloween event, Splatoween, giving players the chance to fight for Team Trick or Team Treat and earn a coveted Super Sea Snail. And Blizzard announced that Overwatch will be free to play this week. The move is to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the game's release on Switch, and is available to anyone with a Nintendo Online membership. So during a Nintendo Treehouse presentation, we got an in-depth look at Pikmin 3 Deluxe and more gameplay from Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Let's start with Pikmin 3, which is out at the end of the month. It's the same game as on the Wii U, but with a number of updates and improvements. And we saw a lot of these new features in the Treehouse, including the Piclopedia, a sort of Pokedex for keeping track of which Pikmin you've discovered so far. We've got side stories that show that Captain Olimar and Louis, what they were up to before the events and after the events of the main game, and the multiplayer mode Bingo Battle, which is kind of like a versus mode where players have to fill up a bingo card by collecting certain items. So guys, what do we make of the new footage? To be honest, I completely forgot it was coming out.
I'm really excited. I completed Pikmin 3 on the Wii U because those are the days where if a Nintendo game came out, you bought it and you played it because it was a rare thing. And that one just happened to be a really, really good game and a really good original game as well on the Wii U. So really excited by the fact that more people get to play this because it didn't sell well on the Wii U because nothing did. And it's the best Pikmin game in the franchise. Pikmin is a franchise from Nintendo that deserves a bit more attention. And they're making a lot of smart, user-friendly changes that are going to benefit first-timers. I think they're doing a lot of things to make it, lower the barrier to entry because this is like an RTS. There's a lot of things to organize. There's a lot of things to do. And that's
exactly right. It's like a lot of moving parts and all the changes seem to be in the interest of user friendliness, like you said.
Exactly. And then they're adding, split screen co-op multiplayer, which is really good. So now you can play it with your kids and stuff. And I played the demo and it controls fantastically. It feels great. I used split Joy-Con with the pointer controls like Super Mario Galaxy on in the 3D All-Stars collection. Man, that controlled like a dream. It felt like the new play control Pikmin 1 and 2 on the Wii, which is, in my eyes, the ideal way to play those games in terms of managing your inventory and stuff with this one and then pointing exactly where we want to go. That seems like the best way to do it and the quickest way to do it. And man, I love it. I'm so excited. I think the footage looked fantastic and I'm really hoping this is the time that Pikmin's going to work. I think we've seen a lot of success with stuff like Luigi's Mansion, where finally it's not just on the Switch. They've put the effort in and made the best in the series. And if it hits properly, I think deservedly, this could be the moment that Pikmin finally becomes part of Nintendo's proper pantheon of home run franchises.
I think a lot of young people are going to really enjoy that bingo battle. I think we're all going to get into it and then be like, oh, okay, well, let's get on with the game. But I think things like that, like you said, are going to help get accessibility with all ages. Although I said accessibility, that sort of reminded me of something you said with the split Joy-Cons. Although it's very fun for us right-handed people, I did see someone on Twitter mentioning It's such a shame because once again, those who have left-hand preference can't switch that. I don't know if that's maybe going to be the case for the full game, but I did see someone complaining about that, and that's kind of unfortunate that although when you do play these kinds of games with a Pro controller, the motion on the Pro controller is surprisingly good. So I don't know if that's the case because I haven't played the demo yet. I'm really looking forward to it. I have some other stuff on my plate, but that could help with accessibility, but that's unfortunate because it's a really fun game. A lot of left-handed people out there.
Do you think this is kind of like a make or break for the kind of the series? Like if this does well, they might kind of continue it on, but if kind of sales are low, they might kind of, put it out to pasture for a bit and then maybe bring it back for the next console generation?
Yeah, heavily into development of the next title, though, I believe.
Oh, there you go.
Oh.
So they're confident it's going to
it's been hinted at. I think Miyamoto has said that he's working on a Pikmin successor. I mean, it's probably been in development for God knows how many years, but I can't imagine they'd want to put that on ice. I mean, the Pikmin series, like you said, it on GameCube, it did okay. Wii U, it completely tanked. This will be its time to shine, really. If it can't do well now, then I think they'll probably reconsider their options for Pikmin in the future. Might be much more limited to mini games and whatnot, or just guest appearances.
Just the character on Smash, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Like Kid Icarus, kind of just abandoned.
Yeah, like Captain Falcon.
Yeah, like Captain Falcon.
Sad times. I read kind of a thing as well. It's like Pikmin 3 runs at kind of in docked mode. It runs at 720p, 30 frames per second, which is the same as the 2013 Wii U version, and 576p in portable mode, which is slightly higher than the Wii U's gamepad. So do you think do you think that's enough, or should they have kind of gone a bit further?
I mean, they could have stretched it a bit. I think that's a lot of people's main complaint is they haven't really done anything with the frame rate. They could have probably upped that slightly. I mean, the resolution seems reasonable given the nature of the Switch. I mean, you have to compensate for Switch Lite, any future hardware revisions that may or may not be coming. I think they could have probably got the handheld version slightly higher. I mean, compared to other software, I think Luigi's probably runs at higher than that, and that's a more modern title.
I think the only issue is that I think maybe the sheer amount of things on the screen is what holds them back. You literally have 100 characters that you're throwing around and controlling, but other games have managed it. You look at stuff like Dragon Quest XI, you look at The Witcher, and
yeah, exactly.
And they've sat on it for 6 years as well. And Nintendo, in terms of in-house, they're the ones that make these games sing. Super Mario Odyssey is still the only 1080 60 frames per second game on Switch, I think. So if anyone's going to do it, it's Nintendo, and they've had a lot of time. So I think maybe they could have squeaked a little bit more out of this, but it doesn't look bad. I think it still looks great, and it's got the classic Nintendo thing of art design is what's selling it. It's all about the clever use of depth of field, the actual design of the characters and stuff. It looks great in motion, but certainly
it could look better.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Yeah,
it could.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, you go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say I've been playing the demo in handheld mode, and it does look okay. And like you say, the art direction is and kind of like is what makes it kind of sing. But it doesn't look like a current generation game. It looks like it's kind of it's just kind of been brought over from the Wii U. I thought they would have given it a little bit more of a polish.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, sort of, in that coming over straight from the Wii U isn't necessarily a bad thing because, oh God, did it look gorgeous on the Wii U. I mean, that was one of my favorite things about it. It really inspired me to make some like 3D art with like real bottle caps and stuff because it's such a beautiful game, and it looked great on the Wii U. It looked great on the gamepad. I like to play it on the couch. But yeah, when you're putting it onto a new console, there's kind of an expectation, sort of like how some people sort of expected with 3D All-Stars for there to be a little bit more done to the games. So I think people sort of expect maybe in addition to the UI, something to sort of have been done to what we're seeing because it's already so nice, but the Switch can do more. So it's a letdown, but is it really that much of a letdown when it already looked so nice? I don't know.
If you look at Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube compared to the 3DS re-release, The main
True.
differences being the texture resolution was increased in that time difference. And I believe they managed to improve the aliasing slightly. I think the Wii U looked really ahead of its time when it came out. It's kind of aged slightly now, obviously, and now we're going into the next generation. Art style alone is kind of holding the Nintendo Wii U stuff definitely higher than they would have been if they'd been on another platform. I mean, PS3 games on the Wii U, they show their age. Nintendo stuff, obviously, because of the art style, etc., it seems to be holding its own still.
So I think at the time they knew they couldn't win the arms race of graphics. So stuff like Mario Kart 8, just Mario Kart 8, not Deluxe. But they were like, okay, well, this is a Nintendo game on a Nintendo system. We know how to make this system sing, and we know how to make this look good with like fantastic design, bright colors and stuff like that. And yeah, that's done them so much favors going forward, like these few years, because now they have been dipping into this library and going, hey, let's put up Tropical Freeze and Mario Kart 8 because these games still look modern. They still look fantastic.
It's funny because at the time when the Wii came out, a lot of people, shrugged it off. Well, it's not HD, but a lot of the Wii's titles have actually aged really well. Like Mario Galaxy looks incredible, and when you compare that to some of the early, stuff it was competing against, they've aged horrendously. Red Dead on PS3, the aliasing and the blur, it's nearly unwatchable. It takes a full HD remaster to even make it look reasonable, whereas the Wii stuff, even slightly up-resed, the art style and the graphics have aged really well on those.
I'm not going to lie. I was playing Galaxy and I blurted out. I said, this looks better than Sword and Shield. And I meant it with all my heart.
No, it does.
It does. It looks, and it's for the Wii. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think, and one of the things, again, Nintendo doing the best they can with their own hardware and their own characters. But I saw a really clever thing today. Anyone know on Twitter, Super Mario Broth, that does Mario tidbits from history?
Oh, yeah. I like that account.
They were showing the way that in Super Mario Galaxy, the way they got the fuzzy texture on the Queen Bee was a really clever layering of this single texture of the fur, but then they made them translucent, more translucent the further they came out. And they were like, it's super simple, doesn't take any processing. They've just stacked the textures and then changed how translucent they are as you go down. And it's like, but that ages so well because it's not something that's just like, no, just throw the graphics at it. It's like, that's just a really clever way to deal with that problem.
And she does look awfully fuzzy.
She looks very fuzzy still looks very good.
We have talked about kind of like a lot, I guess, in comparison to Pikmin 3, Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I guess these kind of these ports, these remasters games are great for players like me who've maybe missed it when it kind of came out on the GameCube or like the Wii U. But I kind of feel like Pikmin 3 is a bit of a tough sell compared to Mario 3D All-Stars, because that was kind of 3 games in one. And this kind of just feels like a bit like an old Wii U game that they've kind of added
plus
a few things
all the DLC.
Plus all the DLC. I guess they've added a few things. So I was going to say, this is kind of another full price game. Do you feel like they've done enough? They've added enough to it to justify people buying it? Or do you think it's going to just be left behind?
I wish Nintendo, with the Wii U ports, had continued the Nintendo Selects line and had gone on and, hey, these were Wii U games and we're going to charge you 30 quid. I think that would have been a much smarter decision, and it would have sold, I don't know, because games like Tropical Freeze still sold really well on the Switch because we're idiots and so many people played it for the first time. But I do wish they were doing something like that, because I don't know what the development costs are in terms of porting, especially when you think of the architecture of the Switch has been built with the Wii U in mind. They knew they were going to do this and they've made it so it's very easy for them to port these games over. Like this particular case, I think, is a really good one because there was a lot of DLC that was all paid. It's all thrown in. They're throwing a load of extra stuff. So of all of the Wii U cases, I think this is the best one we've seen. I think in terms of like added content, other than maybe Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I think this is the time that I'm like, if you're going to sell them full price, I'll take it with this one.
And like you said, a lot of people are playing it for the first time. So a lot of people are going to be able to justify paying full price for it.
Yeah.
Still think they missed the trick not re-releasing the first two, even as their own separate retail release or their own SKU. They could have probably done a Pikmin 1 and 2 remaster to go alongside it, because there are going to be people.
The eShop.
I mean, the GameCube releases, they're not cheap now, and that's the only the accessibility of old Nintendo games is terrible. So, I mean, you could spend a couple of £100 getting a GameCube, getting it spec'd up to work on a modern TV, or, sorting a Wii out, grabbing the games, but the prices go up all the time. It's not really accessible for a lot of people. I think a re-release would have been handy at the same time. They clearly have the emulation tech ready, as we've seen in the 3D All-Stars. Yeah. They could have done it.
Yeah. Really true. And I guess, so because this is coming out at the end of October, and then the next big game after that is going to be the Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which was also shown off at the Nintendo Treehouse. So we've spoken at length about this game before on the podcast, but was there anything else that kind of piqued your interest in the Treehouse?
Koroks. I love the fact that you can find the Koroks in the levels, and I don't know what they're going to give you. I don't know if it's probably going to be equipment and stuff, but I thought that was really cool. And the fact that the way the missions are divvied up is just the entire Breath of the Wild map, and all the missions are just as you go around the map.
I was going to say I love the map because you can compare it to the one in the Breath of the Wild and be like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. I think we saw like Lon Lon Ranch and one other area, which is really interesting.
Yes.
Basically, also I love the fact in the treehouse they were like, and if we go over to Akala, this was Link's house. They're just chatting out things that have been a Zelda theory for 4 years, where people have been like, is this the house that Link had before the Calamity and stuff?
That's exactly what I was going to say. We're getting so much like lore that doesn't even matter, but it does.
Yeah. All these like Zelda YouTubers just like, oh, I knew it.
Yes. Just casually just sprinkling some great Zelda lore on us. I'm loving it. That's what I'm living for with the Treehouse. The gameplay is, there's no surprises that are really going to be found. I mean, maybe little things, little like power-ups and stuff, like you said, the Koroks or something, but we're not going to get too much about in surprises in the way of gameplay, because it's a Warriors game. We're going to get people hacking and slashing big groups, and they're all going to go flying everywhere. So yeah, it is cool to see how the different characters will work, though. I did particularly enjoy watching Zelda. I don't know. I don't think I'll like playing as her, but she's fascinating. She seems like slow but deliberate. You got to know what you're doing with her.
Yeah. I loved the fact that taking a picture damages people. I thought that was so silly.
Thing. Yeah.
I think that, and like the gameplay of Impa, where she's got the giant frog drop, which is basically just from Naruto. But I thought it's nice to see, not that Zelda's not silly often, but it's nice to see sometimes that like Nintendo is still treating the Zelda series with a kind of tongue-in-cheek bit of humor, because it's always been a weird, silly series at heart.
Mm-hmm. But it's not so silly. Like, I feel like Hyrule Warriors, the original one, sort of was a little bit too much on the fun, crazy fan fiction gone wild end. And this one is more and more looking like exactly what maybe people who were reluctant to get into Hyrule Warriors because it was just like not canon. It's giving them everything they want in terms of lore that's going to let them be able to suck up maybe not having the gameplay they like. If they're big RPG buffs and they don't necessarily like hack and slashes, they're going to suck it up and enjoy it, because this is a lot of stuff that we want in terms of story.
Yeah. Also,
and just little jokes.
I definitely think we're going to have some sort of lead into Breath of the Wild 2. I don't think it's going to be big. It'll probably be something as small as like a tiny after credit scene, like at the end of Metroid Federation Force and in Samus Returns. Both of them had tiny little after credits nuggets, but that fans were like, oh my God, that's what this means. I wouldn't be surprised if we got something small, if there is a definitive end at Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. But I think there's going to be a lot of fan service in that aspect, because, this Breath of the Wild is the best selling Zelda game ever now, I think.
Yeah.
I believe so.
And we're probably going to get it the sequel next year. I mean, the Switch came out with Breath of the Wild. The Switch Lite came out with Link's Awakening. If we get a Switch Pro next year, it probably will be with a Zelda sequel. So I think they're going to do everything they can to build up hype for this and make it the best-selling Zelda game. So this is a perfect opportunity, not just to remind us that the franchise is on the way again, imminently, but also like, let's build up the rumor mill. Let's get some little nuggets of information out.
Can you imagine like the after credits, like there's like a level where it's almost like you're playing like the trailer they showed for Breath of the Wild, where you're in that kind of crypt and you're going down, and suddenly Ganon awakens, and then it cuts to credits. That would be
God, that would be so good.
Yeah, I want that, please, Nintendo. And something else that was kind of confirmed during the presentation was that weapons don't break like they did in Breath of the Wild. Instead, you can upgrade them, you can level up, which you do by like visiting blacksmiths, I think, where you can like fuse together different weapons you've collected in battles. So are we happy that the finite durability of weapons is gone, or do we wish they kind of kept that on?
I don't think it works for this sort of game. It worked in Breath of the Wild because it wanted you to innovate. It didn't want you to have a single sword and just go around whacking a sword. But that's exactly what this game wants you to do. So
that's the point.
Yeah. It's not a surprise. It made sense for Breath of the Wild, but here it would just stop the fun. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, it makes your brain go, I'll grab a bomb and I'll throw it, or I'll attach it to an octopus balloon. Whereas in Age of Calamity, you'd just be going, where's my big sword gone? This is annoying.
Yeah, it's gonna be mashing X all the time, just like trying to get through enemies.
Basically, that's why I like those games. I'm not good at like FPS and all that because I'm not very coordinated. But these kinds of games, just like press the button, kind of occasionally glance at the screen. I'm killing stuff. I think I'm winning. Usually, it works out.
There's nothing wrong with the odd game that you just do like a little bit mindlessly. I've got a couple of mobile games that I've played for ages and I'm super invested in, and I barely do anything. I just sit down and I just tap them and I just love it. Just like, this is the tiny little dopamine fix I need. The tiny little progression bar I need going up that makes me think I'm not wasting my life.
Exactly. It's in a Zelda skin, so I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said before, I've never played a Hyrule Warriors game before or a Dynasty Warriors game, but I'm down for this game just purely for the story. Like I'll just be like hammering the buttons just to get to the next kind of cutscene, just to learn more about that world and what happened before Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. I think people are going to be surprised because this is going to be a lot of people's first Warriors game, and I think Hyrule Warriors was still a little bit more involved than some of the other Muso games. I think a lot of people have got an assumption of these as like completely mindless, and they might be surprised that there is a little bit of strategy, especially if you notch up the difficulty in terms of like swapping characters, having to get to certain areas and unlocking things like
there are especially later levels. If you do mindlessly play, you will not win. To put an asterisk on what I said earlier, based on what you said, Nathan, it's not mindless.
It's a super fun, relaxing game. It's not as involved as a Bayonetta, but it certainly, if you are enjoying it, I think you're going to find that there is a little bit more to it and a little bit of actual strategy and stuff. And you're like, this isn't just me tapping A for every moment.
Do you think, because it's almost been every week there's been something new about this game. It seems like they're really pushing it. Do you think this is their big holiday release for the Switch? Or do you think there's going to be like another surprise announcement? Oh, by the way, in December, you're going to get this.
They got coveted a bit badly, didn't they? I mean, in terms of delays, I mean, you might get something mini maybe before Christmas. I imagine everything else has been pushed to 21. Seems like everything else this year is severely delayed. I mean, Japan doesn't work well from home, clearly. I mean, production errors have happened as well. They've had to, slow down production of Switch carts, and with Switch being so majority retail heavy, they kind of have to delay the games to accommodate that. It's not like another console where you can drop a game digital and expect 70% of your sales. Switch is the other way around. You'll lose 70% of your sales by doing that. So I don't know. I feel maybe early next year, the year of Zelda, as I'm hearing.
I think we're going to see a lot of things that were meant for the second half of this year pushed over to next year, and I think next year is going to be super full. I think we might even end up having games that were going to be later next year pushed into 2022 because the schedule is going to be so mad, and they might be ready to go, but because of the way, like John said, production schedules have gone, and Nintendo will not release a game unless it's got the digital in shops. So, I think they're probably going to have a look at the whole schedule and get all the ducks in a row, and a lot of things are going to be moved. So I think this is it for this year. We might see like a direct mini and something like Hollow Knight Silksong. That would be a lovely way, but that's not Nintendo. I don't think there's a Nintendo game in December. Not a
big
retail
one they've got in the vault, like the Metroid remasters They could just
that'll be next. Again, that's a retail release, though.
Yeah.
You can take that out. Now, even the 3D All Stars is the third best-selling game this year, and it's just a limited edition compilation. I mean, it's outsold nearly Doom Eternal. These massive games. It literally goes the Animal Crossing 2, The Last of Us 2, 3D All Stars. I mean, and that literally had a retail announcement, and it was shortly after. As soon as they announced it, it's available in 3 weeks, by the way. That's obviously because they made the carts months ago. But I mean, Metroid Trilogy is the same kind of story. That's going to be a full retail release.
See, that's another one that we've heard so many times this year, and apparently, seemingly, they've had it in their back pocket, and I think that's one of those games that they've been waiting for a gap in a schedule or an unexpected shift like we've had this year. So maybe that'll plug in a gap and they'll be like, oh, all right, you can finally have Metroid Prime Trilogy because we've had it ready for 2 years and now we've got a hole in the schedule. I think that might be one of the ones. But again, who knows what they're doing production-wise and how many resources they've got if they are getting ready to shift new hardware next year. Like maybe they're just stretched a bit thin.
Metroid strikes me as a title that, I mean, I know it could be a filler title, but I think it's more so getting delayed by the issues with Metroid Prime 4 development. I mean, it seems like that game's going to take forever to come out, considering they're now only just hiring, scenario writers and stuff for it, and they've probably restarted it a good few times. I think the trilogy is literally waiting on being that 12 months prior to, to create hype for the game, get people invested in, Metroid again, and then give them the final game instead of it being you play the trilogy, you forget about Metroid, and 3 years later you play Prime 4.
Yeah. Poor Retro. What game have they been working on since Tropical Freeze? What on earth have they been doing for 7 years? 7 years.
A long time.
Yeah. There must be so much hard work that's just gone down the drain. I'd love to know.
It's probably on ice, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because they've had a lot of developers leave as well, so they've obviously had some rumblings behind the scenes. Maybe as well Nintendo wanted them to do some things, they want to do different things. Maybe it was a similar thing as like with Rare, they were upset that Nintendo didn't just buy them. Like, who knows? It's Nintendo. We won't know for years and years. You think like we're only just kind of hearing the story of Star Fox 2, and that was 30 years ago nearly. So like, we're not going to know next week.
They keep a tight lid on it, don't they? They don't want anything kind of leaking out.
Just to elaborate what we said earlier about retail sales, obviously one of the key markets being Japan. It looks to me Animal Crossing sold 5.6 million physical copies just in Japan.
Oh my God.
Which, to put that into perspective, that's more physical copies than The Last of Us 2 sold worldwide. So, I mean,
I think I saw a stat somewhere that's like 8 of the best-selling games in 2020 in Japan were Switch games.
Well, the number one game was Animal Crossing, and then
it's just insane,
Ring Fit, I think, and then Mario All Stars, and then Ghost of Tsushima did well. But I think most of it's Nintendo dominated.
Which is just insane. It's got such a tight grip on that kind of.
It's crazy because the Japanese market for, say, PlayStation, it's a little bit bigger than, say, the UK. But the market for Switch is just absolutely incredible. The numbers it does are just mind-blowing, honestly.
I'd love to see download stats for this year, especially for Animal Crossing, because
I think if you looked at the stats, I've got them somewhere. I believe Nintendo was operating Animal Crossing initially just over 50% digital, and then as soon as the lockdown ended, it switched back to retail again. Quite quickly. They said in their shareholder meeting that initially they had, so when Nintendo do their digital figures, they include subscriptions online, microtransactions with that. If you remove that, they're roughly about just shy of 40% digital on sales. But they said as soon as shops reopened, they noticed that started to drop again quite rapidly. They are a very retail focused business, especially in Asia. Whereas PlayStation and whatnot is kind of the other end of the spectrum. And I mean, they're like 76% digital most of the time.
Also, Nintendo games hold their value, and that's why a lot of people want the physical ones. Us as all Nintendo fans, collectors, I generally like to get the physical version of a Nintendo game because I know in 20 years, our dear leader, Paul, was just putting in the chat about, he was looking at Paper Mario and the 1,000-Year Door on eBay, and it's just through the roof. It's just hundreds of pounds because these Nintendo games hold value, and that's something you don't get with digital. I got Animal Crossing digitally because I know I'm going to play that game every single day, sometimes for a minute. So I was like, I can't bother to swap the cart. Just put that game on there. But
I was lucky enough to be able to review it, and I had a review copy, but I'm such a freak about having the physicals that I got a physical just to have it. Oh. But I never pop it in because, like you, I will pop it in for like 10 minutes, 2 minutes, just to check something. And it's too much of a hassle to switch the cartridges out. And it sort of makes me see the convenience of having digital for everything. But I just can't bring myself to do that with most mainline Nintendo games. I won't normally buy both, but I did buy both in this case. It was just luck. But yeah, it's the digitals. I can see the convenience there if you play the game.
Absolutely.
Frequently.
Yeah, digital wins hands down on convenience. I mean, everyone knows I'm a physical media advocate, but digital is by far more convenient. But what's nice is Nintendo obviously has the option. They said in their shareholder meeting when presented with the question regarding it, they said they do not want to be an all digital company. They will not push to be an all digital company. They want people to have choice, and there will always be people that want that choice, which I think is nice. You know, when you have other companies who will not be named saying that they want to push for a subscription only future, etc., etc. It's nice to see Nintendo, you know, sticking to their core values and saying we want our content to be accessible by anyone, be it online, be it offline, be it physical, be it digital. So I think that's, you know, that's quite refreshing. Even like a lot of the games I buy a physical copy and I buy a digital copy. I keep the physical copy for, you know, my shelf because it's a game I loved, etc., etc. And then I'll play the digital copy.
So you actually do what I
lots of people do. You'll be surprised. A lot of people do that.
Is that shelf behind you
will in the future
filled with games, John?
Used to be. I mean, I used to have wall-to-wall physical games, and then I kind of I went through that phase where I realized I was buying too much. Like, you were doing it just to try and like fill a void, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I, you know, got rid of most of it. And now I only buy physical copies of games I really liked because I'm quite easy to get addicted into buying things. So I get why people do it. I get that people like to own things. I kind of, you know, I always preach about it online about ownership, but for me, the only reason for physical media is for preservation and accessibility. If you remove that kind of, for example, I don't think physical media should exist if it's a code in a box. I think it's abhorrent. It's a waste of plastic. It's environmentally irresponsible. I don't believe games should have downloads required. Again, same reasons. So if you're going to do physical, it should be for the simple reason that if somebody wants that content preserved. They want to, you know, to actually own what they've bought, like vinyl. And the thing is, the market a lot of people get caught up in this. Oh, well, it has to be one or the other. There has never been a single example of a zero-sum market. Look at music. There's vinyl, there's CD, there's super audio CD. Look at books. You know, books didn't die off. Kindles came for books and they survived it. I mean, it's always going to be that way. There's always going to be choice available for people if they want it. And that's the best thing there can be, really. Even if it's a small market, you still want the option.
Yeah, I think there's so many excuses from developers who are just being lazy and maybe don't compress their games properly or can't be bothered to put the effort in. And it's up to either them to pull the fingers out or Nintendo to make sure that developers have the tools, like they worked with CD Projekt Red to make sure that The Witcher in its entirety fit on a cart. I think it's maybe up to Nintendo to make it very clear to developers and be like, hey, here's some of our compression tricks. Here's why Mario Galaxy is like, or Mario Odyssey is like 2 gig or something like that. And but I suppose a lot of that is from the development, but also, you know, here's a cart that's got this much on it. Here's how much it's going to cost. Let's work together and let's do something with it.
I mean, they did that with The Witcher. I mean, I speak to quite a lot of devs about this. It's a little bit of an obsession of mine about the cost of goods of carts. I mean, I've signed NDAs and whatnot, so I can't go into the innermost details of it, but an average Switch cart costs several times more than a Blu-ray for a PlayStation game, despite it only being a quarter of the size. And Nintendo has no mandate to force a developer to have an entire version of their game on the cartridge. They only mandate that for first-party software and exclusive software and software published by themselves. So CD Projekt Red being a big advocate for consumer choice, they own GOG, you know, they're all about DRM-free accessibility. They worked with Nintendo to get those cart prices down, produced 32 gigabyte carts. A lot of game companies, you know, like your THQs and your EAs, mind you, EA's been good. THQs, they would rather you download a huge chunk of data and sell you a cardboard box for the same price as I mean, why are you spending £60 for a code in a box? It doesn't make any sense to me. It just feels like a waste of money.
Well, that was the sad thing. That was the sad thing about like the Borderlands releases this year. Who was that? Like Borderlands,
Gearbox. It's
BioShock
through THQ. It's all THQ, isn't it? Not THQ. what they call 2K. 2K.
That's it. 2K.
I was
Saying
gonna
THQ, they're amazing.
I was also going to call out 2K because XCOM has the same issue.
I mean,
huge
Metro,
download.
When they announced Metro, the double pack on Switch, I was like, oh, for God's sake. And then the actual, I think it was the rep for THQ Nordic reached out and said like, oh, no. We've made sure it's all on cartridge. Because we know the fans want it. We wanted it. So it's really nice. Like, I mean, THQ Nordic is one of the few companies that I've actually seen care about that. It always tends to be the European companies tend to care a little bit more, I find, than the slightly bigger American corporations. No offense.
It's true. It's true.
So moving on, let's talk about Splatoween, which is coming to Splatoon 2 soon, with the 2-day event running from the 30th of October to the 1st of November. Once again, putting Team Trick against Team Treat, with a Super Cease now up for grabs for anyone who plays in the event. So are we going to be sinking any more time into Splatoon when this event arrives?
I never played Splatoon. I don't plan to.
I always play the Splatfests. I love Splatoon 2. I played the first one a decent amount, but the second one is the one that really dug its hooks into me. And Splatfests are just a really good celebration of the game. It's just a really fun excuse to play it. It's kind of like when a character comes out in Super Smash Brothers, the whole community hops on for a weekend. It's nice to have that kind of friendly rivalry, and the way they do it, it's a really good lifeline for the game, I think. It's a really smart way of keeping that community alive with a steady influx of like reminders that it's there, and the way that the square changes and lights up and all of the community, because it's got some of the Miiverse functions of the original in a way that you can draw an image and it pops up, and it's clearly a very community-driven game, and they focus that, and they're like, okay, get all your fan pictures up. Like, it's just a really fun game to play, and it's a really fun community to be a part of whenever you're playing it. I think it's so obvious how much that game is driven by fans, which is why the Splatfests are such a good idea, because it's such a great way to celebrate both the fans and the game. So I can't wait. And Halloween as well, spooky, fantastic. I'm definitely going Team Trick.
Controversial. Yeah, like you say, I think it's a very good, like, keeps the game relevant. It kind of reminds people who've maybe lapsed playing it that, oh, it's it's still a thing. People are still playing it, and it's a good excuse just to jump on for a couple of days, have a few more games, and have fun with it, I think. John, have you played Splatoon? I haven't played
Splatoon.
You haven't?
No.
You're missing
Sorry
out.
to say. I mean, I give it a go on the Wii U. I haven't played any of the successes, unfortunately. Sorry. Yeah. I'm not great at multiplayer games. I really just don't really play them very often. So
yeah, I never play enough to get good, and then by the time I get into them, everyone's so good, and then they tell me to get off because I'm a noob or play a healer.
I think Splatoon's got pretty good matchmaking, but it does still come into the issue of like now, because it's leveled anyway, so you're at a certain level, so you're never going to play with someone that's like level 60 unless there's absolutely no one playing. But for me, the way it got around that is that a lot of the weapons are just fun to use, and because you're not going after kills, you're just painting. So even if you don't kill anyone, you just paint loads. You feel like, yeah, I turned up, I did it. I think that's a really smart way that Nintendo got around that problem of like, well, I'm just going to get shot. And it's nice that it's fun to play no matter what, because like, yeah, I have some game, I'm definitely not good at it, I'm no way good at the game, but I love playing it, and sometimes I do just go around shooting all the empty bits. I'm like, yeah, I did it.
My favorite is the paint roller. I just love kind of like just like running around like a madman, just kind of like rolling over like everyone and like throwing paint at them. It's like, I just think it's like a really fun game that you don't necessarily have to play like religiously. You can just drop in and out of it when you fancy a match, which is what I love about it.
Yeah, it's one that I would consider definitely picking up in the future on sale if I had like more friends to play with post-COVID. If I had more friends.
So another game I'm sure Nintendo and Blizzard are hoping everyone plays is Overwatch. So it's been out for almost a year, but to celebrate the anniversary, Blizzard and Nintendo are letting us play the game for free from the 13th to 20th of October, as long as you have an online membership, of course, which is a given. But I played a lot of the game on PlayStation 4 and a little bit on Switch. I feel like the Switch is not the version, the version that's the worst out of all of them. But is anyone else going to be jumping on the game to try it out or kind of delve back into the game?
You heard what I just said.
Yeah, same.
I've got it on Switch and I've played it a little bit. I only ever played it on the PS4 when they did the free weekends like they're doing now. And I played a few games and I had a good time. And then I got it on the Switch and that's where I've played it the most. It definitely is a bit hampered. I still think it controls really well and I think it's a completely competent port. I wish it looked a little bit better and there wasn't as much, clipping of characters and stuff like that. But I think it runs fine. I really love motion controls, which really swayed me. I just wish people weren't releasing full retail games in this day and age that also had microtransactions. But that's me. I think Overwatch, when it dedicated itself to that whole loot box and microtransaction thing, should have been a free-to-play game. But that is a different question altogether.
Maybe they might be trialing it to see maybe if they should. Maybe for Overwatch 2, they could turn it into a free-to-play game.
No chance. They'll be selling that game full price and they'll be charging you for loot boxes. A lot of people are saying like, well, what would you rather? Would you rather spend, £60 and it's more so about the new prices of games. Everyone's moaning that the new prices is $70 and whatnot, and they're saying like, well, you have to spend $70 because otherwise they'll just increase the microtransactions. No, they won't. They'll put more in and they'll charge $70, and that's exactly what's going to happen as long as they can make money. I mean, we said this last podcast that Nintendo are nice because they don't do it yet, at least, whereas a lot of other companies, unfortunately,
right, exactly. We'll always call them out on this because I don't want them to go down that road because I love them.
I mean, they dipped the foot in it with a lot of the mobile games. When you look at some of the stuff like the cookies and Animal Crossing, Pocket Camp, and then you look at the really predatory kind of Mario Kart Tour stuff, that's what scares me. Like I say I don't mind it when it's free if there's microtransactions, but what really annoys me is the really predatory stuff, the stuff where it's like, you need this, here's the latest thing. Like my brother, he ended up spending £2,000 in Counter-Strike Go on skins.
Wow.
But and you hear these horror stories about the FIFA Ultimate Team stuff, and like it's so much of it is the schoolyard kind of, oh, look what they've got, here's the shiny new skin and things like that. And they can say it's cosmetic and it doesn't make a difference. But when kids are being made fun of in school for having default skins, it does make a difference. It does. It's not just cosmetic.
The entire model is so crooked. I mean, prior to COVID, I was working on a documentary regarding video game addiction in terms of predatory practices in the medium. Obviously, COVID has ruined everything to do with that, so I can't exactly interview people, etc., in person like I wanted to. So that's on hiatus for now. And the idea was it would then be presented to Parliament, it would be presented to the BBC, and we would try and pick up some steam on it and try and get these horrible boxes banned in their current form, at least. I mean, in China. See, my worry with Nintendo was Tencent, obviously. But in China, the regulation, they have to reveal the odds of winning, the loot boxes and stuff, and the odds are horrendous. I mean, you've got more chances of winning the lottery than you have of like winning some of these gold packs. And yet the addiction, the dopamine hit you get every time you try, it adds up and it adds up and adds up, especially to younger generations. I mean, I'm lucky I didn't have that when I was a kid, because I probably would have spent a fortune. And that is primarily probably why I stay away from those games, because I do have an addictive personality. And I definitely, I got into Yu-Gi-Oh cards when I was a kid. I must have spent thousands on them. I couldn't stop collecting them. And I just had folders and folders and folders and folders. I just couldn't stop picking them up. I could barely play. I just like the cards. And it kind of reminds me of that, really. Every time you opened a pack, you were looking for a specific card. It's just that, but even more predatory. Nintendo's mobile games were probably the worst form of microtransactions I've seen from they were awful. So I'm really glad that hasn't hit console, because that was Nintendo at their worst. And that was a very scary picture of what Nintendo could be.
They are going down the DLC route a lot.
Well, we said this last
some
time.
of the DLC is good. Like there's good DLC and there's bad DLC. I feel like the Smash Fighters isn't so harmful. because they already had a huge roster on release, and these are all like bonuses, the expansions. But then you've got other DLC that everyone knows I'm not so fond of. That's maybe you release like an incomplete and sloppy game, and then you start selling parts of it. And while that's not microtransactions, I see DLCs as a different sort of, while it's a great way of keeping the longevity of a game going, it can also be done in a way that's predatory, I guess.
Games as a service by nature is, though. It's very predatory. It's about, driving your engagement as much as possible. So you are more likely to be, closer to a storefront. You are more, likely to buy a microtransaction. You are more likely to buy a cosmetic. Look at Ubisoft. They're horrendous for it. They Breakpoint, Tom Clancy, they make the game online only, so that you are always a click away from the storefront. They could have done an offline campaign. The fans begged for it. It came up as the number one result when they did a petition of what fans want, so they would change the outlook of the game, and they never did it because they wanted players there, so they could always give them content. They wanted to control the updates. They wanted to always have them a click away from a storefront to give them that XP booster. And that's kind of what service games are. Pokemon feels to me like they've taken a game, they've split it up into segments so they can keep you engaged for as long as possible.
I didn't say it.
Yeah, I've said
I didn't say it this time. I didn't say it this time.
It's obvious what they're doing. I mean, they're taking a service route of Pokemon. I even said I think they'll get worse with it. I mean, I think the next Pokemon will be even more service-based, and then they'll do remakes to kind of stave off the fans. That's what the companies do. When they called out, the Hong Kong issues over Overwatch to distract the fans, they gave them an Overwatch 2 trailer several years too early. And it was like, all right, be distracted. And that's kind of what they'll do with Pokemon. They'll be like, well, Gold and Silver remake. And then they'll just go and feed off some kids' bank balances.
I mean, we literally got a trailer for a new Pokemon Snap recently. They were like, oh, remember Pokemon Snap?
Forget all about services.
I don't think it did happen, but imagine if the reaction to Pokemon Sword and Shield is why they were like, quick, we need a new Snap, like distract them because
quick, get it out. Yeah. Like, I guess it's more like Pokemon Unite as well. That's going to be
that's how it's
microtransactions.
That's the plans coming together.
That's the one that worries me. Pokemon Unite is one of the ways that I'm very worried about Nintendo, because is that made with Tencent?
Yeah, it's that influence, isn't it? This is that outside influence.
Which isn't to say that every free-to-play game is bad, but certainly it just can lead to bad practices. And you are completely right as well in terms of the piecemeal reselling of content that should have been in an original game. We all kicked off about stuff like Bethesda and Fallout 76 when they were actually reselling people things that they should have had in the original game. Imagine like No Man's Sky. Imagine if instead of fixing the game, they just sold everything that they told you was originally going to be in it. Each point, No Man's Sky is a pinnacle of how you deal with criticism, upset fans.
Absolutely.
But also they are a small company that couldn't afford to fail. And their choices were ignore this or fix it. Whereas Pokemon are big enough to ignore it.
Yep. Yeah. And that's why I mean, I get a lot of flack for saying this a lot, and especially on the Twitters.
You say it a lot.
I do say it a lot, and I get a lot of flack for saying it, but I'm like, guys, we have to stop putting our wallets into it, because then they're going to go, oh, great, they'll still buy it. So we're going to keep doing it. And now they're doing it. And now this is like the last chance for people to be like, I'm going to speak to you with my money by not giving it to you. And you're going to be like, oh no, this is a failure. I should probably not scam people. Yeah, I don't know. I say this out of, I'm so outnumbered. And I say this out of love for Pokemon, because I've been a huge fan since I was 7 years old. Well, 7 was when I got video games for the first time. I used to watch the anime since my living memory. So I'm a huge fan. And it kills me to see Pokemon in particular going down this route, Nintendo in general. But Pokemon's probably my favorite Nintendo franchise, with Zelda like really close behind. And it's losing steam for me because of all this, because the fans are so rabidly okay with everything, and
they defend it as well, like aggressively. Yeah, I've been called all kinds of names for calling out the deck stuff and the
aggressively, right? And they make assumptions about you and this and that, and it's like, no, I'm saying all this out of love, deep love for Pokemon, and it hurts to see it going down this route, and I really hope that people wise up a little bit and maybe take their fan goggles off, because when you take your fan goggles off, you can be an objective, critical thinker and think about what's happening here in the wide scope of things.
No, I agree with you. I reviewed Pokemon Sword and Shield, the first DLC, and I've been heavily critical because I haven't been happy with them. But I still play them a lot because, unfortunately, if you're a Pokemon fan, you've got nowhere to go. But I think what's particularly insidious for me is that Pokemon hides behind this veneer of being a children's franchise, and everyone goes, "Oh, it's for kids." Well, I don't know why you're so worked up about this, but it is for kids, but also they're charging 90 quid for the entire in-game package in shops this Christmas,
which you have to buy twice to get all the Pokemon.
Like that's not something for kids. That's not something you do for kids. That's a horrible business decision that's preying on fans that are older. So are you doing something that's good for kids, or are you preying on the adults? And in which case, make a package for adults. Like, I think they kind of get away with so many things because of that excuse and that kind of bright, happy, oh, look at Pikachu kind of really wonderful persona they've got. But yeah, they need to start acting with the fans in mind, because it's the fans that are buying these games.
And I guess eventually maybe they'll turn against it if they start kind of like squeezing them for more and more cash.
You take a younger market and you alter their perception of what gaming is. And this is my biggest worry. So the people growing up with gaming now, they're expecting subscription services. And by nature, subscriptions and services come with caveats. You cannot sustain very expensive content on a subscription. It's just impossible. Right. And that's why Netflix, they buy up smaller indie films that aren't getting picked up. They make their own products, but they make series. The reason they make series is because there's engagement. It's all about engagement. And they very occasionally release a blockbuster just to hook you, but it's mostly about engagement. And the same with Spotify, paying artists, you have to listen to 1,000 hours of Spotify before they pay you $1 or, and that's the trouble with subscriptions. And the only way you can leech back that extra revenue is by microtransactions, service content, these passes, battle passes, like Fortnite does. And unfortunately, if everyone adopts this subscription route, the downside will be the death of the single player game as it is now. I mean, you won't get a complete experience. You'll get a piecemeal experience sold back to you over 10 years like Halo is going to be. It's kind of a very sad thing to look at Pokemon if it goes that route. Any of the Nintendo games, really. Nintendo's lucky that the games it makes kind of don't really suit that market, but I'm pretty sure they could make them suit that market if they wanted to.
Yes, and they're starting
Pokemon.
Especially Pokemon.
Peak in that direction, especially with Pokemon. And it's like you said, John, it's the part that I think would kill a lot of us elderly folks is seeing these people who are now growing up with it, and this is the norm. This is how games are. Like, we're the crotchety old people going, back in my day I bought the console and I bought this cartridge and I put it in and that's the whole game. And kids are like, well, you can't do that anymore, Grandpa. And Grandpa goes, yes, actually, let me explain to you how this console works and how it can support all of these things, but instead it's being sold to you over time. But it could all be sold to you at once. Well, would you rather pay more at once, Grandpa? Yes, I would, grandson. I'm a grandpa now, but you get what I'm saying. It's. I think kids are just going to be like, this is how it is now. I mean, and they're fine with it. There's no other alternative, and it stinks. It makes you feel helpless, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I was shocked recently that they I think it's the UKIE, which is like a sales data analysis firm. They released some data which I wasn't expecting, and it was looking at buying habits and spending habits before and during COVID in relation to the boom that video games saw in terms of sales. And the most predominantly physical buyers were under the age of 22. It blew my mind. I did not see that coming. I thought it would be the older people. No, we're not. We're the other way around. We're going more digital. And that is probably to do with expendable income. and convenience. And whereas the younger generation is probably more attached to, the availability of resale, loaning to friends. I didn't expect this statistic. I moan about the youngsters all the time, and it turned out, my generation was more so the problem. And then it kind of switches back around as you get older. 40 plus, it kind of goes the other way again. But the younger is kind of the generation in between, the 25 to 35 is really the problem in terms of digital engagement and spending.
Wow.
Obviously, ignore Fortnite and stuff. That's a different ballgame altogether. That's a different audience, though. The people
First,
buying
I thought it was
Pokemon
my avocado toast. I didn't realize it was my digital games.
Yeah, the people buying Pokemon aren't really the Fortnite players. That's a completely different market. That's I think that's primarily mobile. In fact, I think of the 110 million players, like a good 80% of them are on mobile. So that's a different market, but that's, completely surprised me. I didn't expect it. So maybe there is a chance we can be saved from a subscription Armageddon.
One can hope.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we talked about Overwatch somewhere in there.
Beginning.
God, sorry. It got carried away.
Jump off point. It was a jump off point. It was very, very, very interesting. So let's move on to another section, a new section. It's a new segment I'm going to call the Ultra Spicy Takes, where our guest reveals an opinion or take that's hotter than a fireball from Mario's Fire Flower. And then after much debate, me, Anna and Nathan will decide if it's a Ninty fresh take, see what I did there, or if it deserves to be banished to the Junkyard Galaxy along with the likes of the Wii's Vitality Sensor. Now, John, the honour is yours this week. You're the very first person to do this. And me, Nathan and Anna haven't heard anything about what you're about to say. So get ready for some strong reactions. So what is your ultra spicy take?
Well, I was expecting it to be really spicy, but the way the conversation's gone, I kind of doubt it now. I was going to say that I believe the Nintendo's aggressive persecution of Team Executor is bad for gaming preservation and the future of gaming, because I do not trust Nintendo or gaming companies with their own legacies. So Team Executor, they are responsible for the OS hacks of the Nintendo Switch, the Switch Lite, and previously the Nintendo 3DS. And Nintendo has recently managed to ban their flashcards essentially from stores. So what people were doing was they were buying the flashcards and they were soldering within the console to allow them to use pirated software. So I consider that an issue. Whilst the system is active, I consider that an issue. So I don't agree with people pirating games whilst Nintendo is, selling the console, selling the active software. But I believe once a console is discontinued, most of these game companies do not care about the game's history. They do not care about the legacy. And it's up to individuals to preserve these titles at that point. And that is where, my opinion of Nintendo's aggressive persecution of them comes from. They've actually managed to, I think they've arrested a couple of them and they've extradited them to America. And they're suing them for like $5 million or something like that.
Gosh.
Yeah, they're being very aggressive with this. And I just don't believe that the persecution of, software hackers and whatnot is a good thing for gamers in the long run. I feel that it can lead us into a very dark place in the future where stuff isn't accessible. I mean, that's my main concern with gaming is, with cloud and subscriptions and online, is that we'll eventually reach a point where all content is locked to the internet, DRM. And if I look back at how Nintendo has treated most of their consoles, they've basically left the games to die. They lock them behind paywalls. They don't release them at all. They just, hold on to them. They covet them and they don't let anyone have them. And recently you had the recent data release where all the old Nintendo stuff came about, like, Luigi being in Mario 64 and all these files got leaked, which had just been sat there forever. And Nintendo just, hoarded them essentially. So yeah, that's my spicy take.
Saw that today, Luigi and Mario 64. But your take is very fresh, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm fairly on board with you. I think the difference is that fans see it as a case of preservation, whereas game companies see it as a business opportunity. And unfortunately, Nintendo are always going to drip feed us things because it is a way to sell us things. It's always a little crumb of excitement when they're like, oh, maybe after 3 years on the market, we'll give you Donkey Kong Country 2 for the SNES, and you'll all be grateful for it. And it's upsetting that it's like that. It's really upsetting that it's like that, because these are 25-year-old games, and what an incredible console it'd be if through the gate they were like, here's Nintendo Switch Online. I from March, whatever it was, 2017, right. They were like, here's Nintendo Switch Online, here is every NES, SNES, N64 game, we'll chuck more down the line, but they are just with your console, you just get them. And unfortunately, they haven't done that. And you're right, the amount of money and the amount of effort it takes to get these games, preserve them. And some of these games are just going to get lost to time. When you look at games that are confused with licensing issues, with legal issues, a lot of these games, there's just literally no way to play them. And I do defend people's rights to preserve older games. I agree, if you're selling something that encourages hacking of a product that's on sale at the moment, yeah, you're in tricky waters. But, right. When it comes to literally preserving the legacy of a company you love because they're not doing it themselves.
Right. I think this extends a little farther to take a step back. It's not even prosecuting or going after people who are preserving the legacy of games through actually, emulating. But recently, like, for example, I don't know if we should name names, but them going after artists and people who make fan products, fan-made products, art, and maybe even try to go the legitimate route and reach out. Hey, Nintendo, I'm a big fan. I make all this content. Let me work with you. No. Oh, but we will come down on you legally for it.
I will sue you for millions. Yeah.
I will sue you if you continue. And so it's... I like to compare Disney and Nintendo a lot. Absolutely. In this respect. They're very protective of their intellectual property. And for the very reason that Nathan points out, they want to drip feed it to you over time. And they want to give you that, lock it in the vault and then take it out for like a week or, and make you feel like, oh, I got to buy it now. And then it's going back in the Nintendo vault or the Disney vault. And then it will become unplayable, unbuyable, whatever. And it does a disservice to your fans who truly just want to, like you said, preserve the legacy, but also like enrich it and create like a lasting culture. Think about Harry Potter and how vast the culture became because people were able to make these fan things, these fan groups. They made their own version of Quidditch. They created like fictions and all these arts and things, and nobody really came down on them too hard for it because they were creating the fandom. And I feel like this keeps the fandom kind of quiet and in line in a way that's a little bit too heavy-handed. It's not necessary.
I kind of feel like it's like a dangerous precedent. Like they're releasing the 3D Mario All-Stars. That's a limited release. And if that's obviously been a huge success,
there is no reason to limit that title.
Yeah,
and nothing's going to stop them doing that for the if they do it like that for Zelda, a pack of Zelda games or Metroid. We said that's in the vault. That's going to come out when they want it to. So I think it's a very kind of dangerous thing. I guess you've seen that as well. They're kind of removing games from the Wii U eShop that are going to come to Switch. So the only place you can get them is the Switch, unless you own a physical copy of that game.
And as they release these games from the 90s or whatever, they're going to keep being able to justify to themselves coming down on people who are trying to preserve games that are old because, we might want to do something with that down the line. But in the end, they're just generally very protective of their IP.
I think one of the things that annoys me is when you see other companies doing it so well, and maybe they do it from the position that they're on the back foot, but when you look at the way that Sega works with Sonic, the amount of fan projects that are maybe not like encouraged, but they're known and they're talked about. And then they made a game with the developers of fan games. Sega reached out, and Sonic Mania is the best Sonic game in nearly 20 years. Like that sort of olive branch, or at least meeting in the middle, can prove so fruitful. Like Nintendo, you have got so many talented fans that could help you out. When you look at the Metroid 2 remake, and obviously that was specifically because they were already making a Metroid 2 remake, but there's so much scope to work with people and to actually build a community, and games like Undertale became the sensations they were because of community, because of people spreading that because they could. And I don't think Nintendo are missing out on loads, but certainly reputation is something that people notice, and it's something that people remember as well. Like, it's sad to be a Nintendo fan when you talk about these sorts of things and have to kind of have the caveat of be like, yeah, they are a bit rubbish sometimes as well.
I mean, when you look at, so this comes a lot back to accessibility, really. Physical media, say on previous Nintendo generations, I'll look at obscure titles. So there's some very obscure Japanese titles like Magical Poppin and Rendering Ranger R2 on the Super Famicom. If you want a box copy of either game, you're looking at about £4,000 for Rendering Ranger and about £1,500 for Magical Poppin without a manual. Just looking at eBay right now. I mean, those games are lost to time. They are inaccessible. They will never be re-released by anybody. So in my eyes, the preservation of these games is very important. And we will reach the stage in 20 years' time where we look back on the Nintendo Switch and we think, oh, you know, I can never play this game again. And that's where I believe these kind of mods are important. Like I said, I do not condone piracy whilst a system is in active use. But I truly believe that once a system is done, and at least with the older consoles, the patents have expired now. And that's why they're able to make these, you know, like you see these custom consoles and stuff to play the games. And that's why they only go after people with the ROMs. But I truly believe that they do an invaluable job. And the people defending this on Twitter, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like corporate cheerleading. It's like,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. What hill are you dying on right now?
Whose side are you on? I mean, you're applauding the death of preservation. I always have this argument when people say to me like, don't you have internet, old man? I'm like, yeah, I have plenty good internet, but I don't agree that, you know, games should be locked behind clouds, only accessible to the few that have good bandwidth, etc. I mean, obviously, excuse the rest of the world that doesn't have good internet infrastructure or accessibility, or, you know, the war zones or the countries of severe censorship, or just the countries or the people that just prefer it, even if they've got fantastic internet like myself. I mean, there's this excuse that people get behind companies, they get behind corporations, and they cheerlead all these actions that I find so unnecessary. You know,
no, like, they don't have to be your friend. They're a company.
Yeah, they should all be online, man. You shouldn't have any access to your games, and, you know, you're lucky they let you. Oh, I'm lucky, am I? I said no, they're lucky. We all buy their products.
Exactly. We're the ones paying them. We need to realize the power we have as consumers.
I think a lot of times as well, people don't really think about something too much until it affects them. Absolutely. And what I want to do is like, look at the worst case scenarios. We're so lucky we're getting Scott Pilgrim back now. Yeah. If you're a fan of that game, you look at stuff like PT, and then, you know, when you think about, imagine a worst case scenario where after Rare was sold to Microsoft, or they weren't, maybe they went bust, and maybe instead of Rare Replay, we can no longer buy or play Banjo-Kazooie games or Conker's Bad Fur Day because these licenses are dead and gone. Like, that is a very real possibility with a lot of people. That really could have happened. And we're so lucky that we've got stuff like Rare Replay, but it's, you know, we could be doing exactly the same thing where it's like, if you want to play Banjo-Kazooie, which is one of the best 3D platformers ever made, you're spending thousands of pounds, in which case you're right, it's gone, it's lost. And that is not fair to the legacy of the people that made the games, the people that enjoyed the games. And, you know, it is an art form, and especially for the fans that love these things, it's so easily lost. It's so easily lost.
Yeah, if nothing else, for posterity's sake, like, yeah, it is art.
Eventually this stuff will be considered that, and it will be vaulted correctly. And they've already started to get laws that, for example, if a game's past a certain date, an online game, you're allowed to make your own servers and take it over, and the game companies can do nothing about it. I mean, they are starting to cotton on to this now, and that the video game media is important and the preservation is important. I just want to put it into perspective for people that may be listening. If Xbox in 2013 had their reality and they allowed for an always online ecosystem, now, let's say that everyone else did that. Let's say Nintendo followed them and PlayStation followed them. If you think of every amazing game that we've all enjoyed and loved and, you know, laughed at and hated and cried over, and all these fantastic experiences. I mean, like games like Breath of the Wild, games like Zelda, all the different Zelda titles, The Last of Us 2, these fantastic games. One day they would never be playable again. There would be no way of accessing them. They would be gone forever. Once the servers are down, none of these memories, none of these experiences would ever be possible or playable, and they would be gone permanently. And that is the reality that they pushed in 2013, but people pushed back and it stopped it. And the question is, how long will people push back until it becomes an accessible medium? And cloud gaming is 2013. That's what they want. They want that reality. They want 2013. They want xCloud, for example, to be exactly the same process, because it's the same thing. You're always online. You have no control over content, but you don't care because it's only $9.99 a month. And in 10 years' time, like Nathan said, you'll be like, oh, I can't ever play that game again. Why did I do that? But people won't care until it's an issue for them.
Right. Everyone keeps telling me, get Game Pass, get Game Pass, get Game Pass. And I'm like, first of all, a lot of the stuff on Game Pass isn't really my flavor. But if it was, I'd be like, if I really want to play that game, I'd want to own it for that very reason. If I really want a game, I had that phase in middle school where I sold a bunch of games to make a little money, and I regretted it so much by the time I was like 20. I hated myself. I was like, why did I do this? Because I sold like 358 over 2 days, and it's just games that I want to buy back now just to have. Yeah, so you might regret it down the line, kiddos. Who knows?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, because I think like things like Game Pass, like Netflix, it's like it seems like there's so much choice, but it's like an illusion of choice. It's what they decide you have, what they've got in license. And yeah, like you say, you can't always just a game you want to play, you're desperate to play, you can't just log on to that.
Well, and like, 5 years later, when you go, oh man, I remember when I played so much Banjo Kazooie. Oh, but you played it on Game Pass. You didn't play it on your thing. You don't have Banjo Kazooie anymore.
If you're not subscribed to that anymore, it's just all in the cloud. And it's like, so I definitely think that physical media is that's why I feel sad when it's like you got the digital only PlayStation 5 and digital only kind of Xbox Series S. See, getting confused already.
I feel that the PlayStation was a slightly different tactic, though. I feel that because I've spoken to a lot of retailers about this. I mean, I went globetrotting with this one, and nearly all of them told me Sony barely produced a single digital unit. I mean, they got 80 standard one digital console, and it's a clear tactic. They wanted to be the cheapest console, but they wanted you all to spend more money on the standard console, because that's what enthusiasts do. The first 20-30 million people buying a console are enthusiasts. Then they will ramp up digital production in 3 years' time. So that made sense to me. Xbox, however, is a little bit different, because they are, from what I've been told, they are marketing the S series as their main console alongside the cloud and Games Pass. It is more a push for Games Pass. PlayStation is trying to give you a console. They're trying to give you a console that works offline. You can download games, but it doesn't have a subscription really, not a day one anyway. They want to give you these tentpole games, a bit like Nintendo. Nintendo's no different. They give you these flagship titles that you play. Xbox, they don't. They want to subsidize the content. They want to give you an S series so that you're probably desensitized to pricing by the time they say, actually, guys, we're not going to do consoles anymore. We're just going to go in cloud, or you can go on, Games Pass for PC. And at this time, most of the audience will be like, yeah, well, I don't care. I've just been Games Passing it for the last 10 years anyway. And that will be the point where it will suddenly change, and there won't be any physical media. There won't even be any digital media. It will just be gone. It'll be cloud. It'll be a sudden drop off. There'll be no option.
When you think about how quickly things, this game's online. 5 years later, suddenly it's dead. Oh, this game is, what else? There's I saw, can't remember the YouTuber, Scott the Waz video. Someone showed me, I had never seen him before. And one of the first ones I saw was about the Wii menu. And like all the stuff on the Wii menu. Well, does this one still work? Does this one still work? Does this one still work? And most of them, yeah, indeed, John. Most of them is nope. And the Wii wasn't that long ago. So when you think about the longevity, you're buying a piece of, this is my personal take. You're buying a piece of hardware that's going to be inevitably going to be obsolete. Whereas like I'm talking about digital consoles right now. It's inevitably going to become obsolete. Like whether it might be longer shelf life than older digital things, but I can always pop something in my DS or something in my N64, albeit maybe something might break. But I don't know. Do you guys see what I'm saying here? It just seems a little strange to me to pay even a cheaper price, but to buy this box, this physical piece of hardware.
Perception, though, it's all about the perception of cost. So by saying to somebody it's £100 less, they'll get this many people diving in, but they forget that
in 10 years, it might be useless.
Well, even that, but look at game pricing. So digital pricing is always higher than physical, nearly universally. You look at England. So for example, right now I'm looking at PS5 games. I can buy Spider-Man for $51.99 physical. Digital is $59.99. And that's locked, and retailers can adjust price and digital can't. I buy the digital console, I fill it with games. 10 years time, the servers have gone down. Don't worry though, all my games are stored on my SSD. 10 years later, my SSD has failed. You can't repair lost content, especially if the servers have gone and it's inaccessible.
It just seems a little ill-conceived to me.
That's where these teams come into it, like Team Executor. So, I mean, your Nintendo 64, something may break, but you have the right to repair that system, and it's very easily done. And teams like them are making these, carts that you can copy your existing cartridges on for preservation, et cetera, et cetera. That your digital console, for example, in 10 years time, you may have a digital only PlayStation 5, and in 15 years time, someone might release a chip that allows you to download extra games and stuff, even though it's now obsolete. And that, I don't see an issue with that. I do not see a problem with that. Yeah. And that comes back to I get, while the PS5's out, you don't want to see that. You don't want Nintendo losing revenue, blah, blah, blah. Because if anything, that incentivizes them more to go online. That incentivizes them more to have digital rights management. Xbox would ideally, if they have an xCloud situation, there will never be piracy. There will never be anybody doing anything they don't want them to do, because they'll have complete control. And I don't see who loses in that situation. Us, obviously, they don't lose. That's the win-win for them. So I get, whilst the console's out, that is harmful, and that could push Nintendo to say take some, bigger risks. For example, the fuses in the Nintendo Switch, they blow when you update a firmware. And that stops you retroverting, like lowering the firmware. That they've already started putting quite severe, anti-hack tech in the Switch. So I mean, that we might get to the stage where it's basically unhackable, and then in 20 years' time, that will be a nightmare for preservation. The Xbox One is the worst one currently. It's the only console in human history that will basically be, as it stands now, impossible to function. I was talking to the Right to Repair EU. They're like an EU organization that their main focus is for environmental waste. It's to ensure that technology is repairable by the general public, and they've had great success. TVs in Europe as of 2021, they have to provide parts for up to 10 years after they're discontinued. Same with tablets. They're the guys that forced Apple to change their tablets ports. We were talking about Xbox, and basically because Xbox requires an Xbox Live account sign-in when you first turn on your Xbox One. Once the servers are down, 50 million consoles are useless, and they can never be repaired. They can never be formatted. Doesn't matter if you've got discs or you have digital games, they will never function. If you need to reset them, you need to remove a user. And does the world really need 50 million useless plastic boxes? I mean, Xbox could release a firmware and fix this, but they won't. And I find that quite abhorrent. And and our only hope is that people like Team Executor work out a way of getting in that console, putting a chip in that bypasses that. And then suddenly we don't have 50 million useless pieces of plastic sitting around. Suddenly we have an actual viable piece of technology. Yeah.
That's precisely what I think will happen with the digital console. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah,
no, sorry.
That's all I was going to say. Like, that's exactly what I think is going to happen with the digital consoles. It's one day they're all going to be useless.
Do we need that? I mean, in the world we're in now, they recently shown that the cleanest source of energy for video games is digital. Okay, it uses something like 45 grams of carbon if you play for an hour, but then it was physical at 55 grams, and then streaming was like 145 grams of carbon, and that's at 1080p. So 4K streaming is even worse. And then people are like, oh well, yeah, but there's the carbon cost of making a physical product and stuff. But the difference is the cloud stream is finite. You do it once. It's the equivalent of one-time use carbon. So if you stream a game for less than 3 hours, it's actually the cleanest way of doing it. If you play a game for more than 8 hours, the best option is digital and then physical, because by the time you make that game, package it, post it, distribute it, and get it in people's hands, it's then permanent. It can be passed along, it can be resold, it can be reused. That cloud is finite. And until we have a renewable energy source globally, there is no way that, like fusion or something, there is no way that is a cleaner method whilst it has to go through the swings and roundabouts that it does now. So, I mean, none of this really benefits us. It benefits the companies, but I don't, all the people, it just annoyed me. Everyone was cheerleading this on Twitter.
Right.
And I went at some people, and then I was like, oh, I had to mute a few people, getting called out as I usually do. But yeah, it kind of upset me really that people care so little, and they're so say fans. I mean, why would any self-respecting video game fan want their favorite games to be lost forever? I mean,
rightfully so. I understand the frustration, especially because we love gaming and we want the thing we love, like the fashion industry struggles with this too. We want it to be done in a way that's environmentally conscious. Like, we don't want to leave the world a worse place. And all these things we're getting excited about and snapping up and buying now, we're going to pass off to our kids, and they're going to pass off to their kids. And then it's going to pollute the world and make, like, I know it sounds so minimal, like, oh, but that's a big part of sort of what we're talking about. That's not the main point, but it's a big point. It's a big part of it. And I would be really upset. I'm getting really upset thinking about the sheer waste of the gaming industry that we're trying to overcome. But I think in some ways of trying to overcome it, we're making it worse.
It's false equivalency. It's like a false equivalency. It's like Apple offering, we recycle all of our phones, blah, blah, blah. And then the end user is like, oh, well, I will buy a new iPhone because, Apple recycle them. That doesn't change the fact they make the phones so obtuse to repair that nobody bar them can do it. And they solder the T2 chips, they solder it all together so nobody can fix these phones, and they make the parts really, really difficult. And they fought in America and they won against the right to repair. So Apple won against them. So basically they won to stop the average consumer fixing their phones. A product you've probably spent over £1,000 on, Apple fought you at court to make sure you were not able to fix it yourself. I mean, that scares me. And all that tech will eventually, I mean, I'm sure a bit of it gets repaired, but a lot of it doesn't. A lot of that will end up in, well, so many people kind of scoff, don't they? But eventually the scoffs will get drowned out by, chaos. So
people who are suddenly realizing, oh, this affects me.
Oh yeah, exactly. And the average person doesn't notice it until it's too late, unfortunately. Look how people acted with COVID. Oh, I won't wear a mask. I won't do this. I won't do this. Oh my God, I need to wear a mask. It kind of came a little bit too late. I feel like people are doing that now with technology and advancements. They're like, oh wow, this streaming stuff's great. And who needs ownership and who needs that? And that's such a, such a 90s thing, to own something. Yeah. And then in 10 years time, they'll be like, what have I done?
Yeah, everyone will miss it when it's gone. It's kind of like crazy, yeah. I feel like I've learned a lot in this section. It's kind of like a little
bit bleak, wasn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It got dark.
Still interesting though.
Exactly. So what do we think? Is this an ultra spicy take, or is this a ninty fresh take? Are we on board with Team Executor?
That's a tricky one. Rephrase that. Are we on board with John?
Yeah, I'm on board with John in terms of preservation. I think this is a very fresh take.
Yeah.
Fresh take.
I'm going to give it a thumbs up too.
Great.
Definitely no secrets there.
So let's move on to games we've been playing recently. We've got a couple of games coming out this week. I guess the big one's kind of like Cloudpunk, which is where you kind of play as a delivery driver exploring like a neo-noir futuristic city, very reminiscent of kind of Blade Runner. That looks like a really, really good game. It's out on PC already and Steam. And then also we've got Mario Kart Circuit Live, the kind of AR kind of Switch game. I must admit, I pre-ordered the game after watching the kind of Nintendo Direct, and then now I've cancelled it. I just £100 too much to kind of like drop on something that I
wonder how many people did that.
Yeah, we don't really know really that much about it. I watching some of the previews, reading some of the previews. I was a bit like, do I need it now? Will it drop in price? So, is anyone else kind of like gonna buy it, or maybe wait for it to come out?
Absolutely not. £100, way too much.
It's
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I live in New York City. That is way too expensive. I could spend that money on tacos.
Yeah, I like Impulse. Yes. Pre-ordered it and the Luigi one, and then I cancelled them both.
Yeah,
and I realized how expensive it was, and then I realized that they're like, you don't actually, the game's an app, isn't it, that you download on the Switch. It's just a free app, so it's kind of like, okay, they haven't really put that much effort into this then.
Yeah,
I was
imagine
expecting
it might
like a
be
full-on
like
release.
Labo or something where it kind of goes down in price eventually. And
But Labo at least was a full experience, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
art, you got all that stuff. This kind of feels just like, oh, it's an app. What can we do with an app?
Yeah, yeah.
I know,
And, specifically timed for kind of like Christmas, like they know.
yeah, I mean, I get it. I get what they're doing it.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to skip it for now.
So we're not going to be playing that this week. What is everyone else playing? What games have you been having fun with this week?
Out this week, I think came out, what's today? Today on recording, we're recording on the 11th, good. On the 9th, Survivalists came out. The Survivalists by Team 17, I think is the developers. Same people who made The Escapists. And it's interesting. I'm looking at it for Ninty Fresh. And it's like people who like Terraria, gosh, it's a party out there today. Anyone who likes Terraria will probably enjoy this, except I will say it's probably a lot more fun control-wise on the PC. But it is generally a really cool concept. You're like surviving, but you have monkeys that you can slowly collect, and the monkeys can do things for you. And it's kind of fun to kind of discover all the things you can get your monkeys to do. Like, oh, you don't have enough inventory? Have a monkey carry a chest around. And then, you can just have that. It seems a little more creative than making a backpack for yourself. I don't know. It's interesting take on the survival genre, and it has multiplayer, which I've yet to test out, but I'm excited to.
Nice. I picked up the Pikmin 3 demo because I really wanted to try it out and see how it felt control-wise, because much as I love my Wii U games, that controller feels horrible. So that was really nice to return to. And then weirdly, I've been playing loads of Dragon Quest XI Definitive Edition.
I want to get back to that.
Yeah, so it was on sale on the Switch, 40-something% off, so it was just about 25 quid. And I've always wanted to play it, and I was like, a JRPG is a good game to get digitally because you're going to be playing it for ages. You want it on there. And I played the demo for 10 hours whenever it came out ages ago. Man, it's so good. That is such a good RPG. I'm having a great time. I've been off ill for the last couple of weeks, and because of that, I've been trying not to play any games that I need to review, because my brain doesn't, because then I'll be thinking about it or making notes and stuff. And I've been having so much fun just playing a game for fun, just like tearing through, leveling up. And Dragon Quest XI makes so many smart decisions in terms of speeding up the process of leveling up, of getting around to places, of choosing what your characters do. So you can individually assign each party member with the way you want them to battle. And then if you want to, you can automate the entire thing. So you can choose to have everyone battle the way you want them to battle. And then you just start the fight and you're like, go. Or you can do it piece by piece, exactly how you want. Man, that's been so good. Like if I'm grinding, I just set everyone to smash them up. You heal, you use MP, and I'll just run around and just press and watch them win, or or if I can see they're losing, I can just press one button, quickly jump in and be like, okay, no, we need to do this.
Right.
And it's just a really lovely, colorful, bright, funny game. Like the voice acting's fantastic.
Game. The voice acting is so good.
Oh man, yeah, I'm having a blast. I'm nearly 30 hours in now, and I can't wait to finish it already. I'm so excited.
It must be nice to play a game as well, like it's just for you, rather than you're like, as you say, rather than like you're constantly thinking like, oh, I need to write that down.
I get in the habit of like things become ideas for content too quickly.
Yes.
And then I'm like, oh, I could write about this, or I could do this. And I very specifically have been like, don't do that with this. Don't turn this into a top 5 JRPGs on Switch video or something. I'm like, just play it and enjoy it. But I am fighting the urge to want to write about it a lot.
I have the exact same issue. It's so hard to just enjoy a game and be done with it and be like, all right, I finished it. We're not making content. We're just going to enjoy the game.
Yeah.
Just move on, yeah.
That's it. That's all the content from Dragon Quest XI's you're getting from me. It's good. Yeah, it's really good.
Thumbs up. I've been playing a lot of like Rocket League, because that's like free to play now.
Yes. Right.
Love that so much. I played with our deputy editor, Ben Hayho, and I discovered he is like incredible at it. Like I played on his team and he just did all the work, scored all the goals, and I just kind of felt
there you go.
Kind of driving
you can
around.
Hustle people.
Yeah. So
That's
definitely.
awesome.
If you get a chance to play with him, he'll carry you. He'll kind of help you rank up.
Yeah, right.
Really
Good
fast.
to know.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I've been playing a little bit of Rocket League because our one of my adjacent podcasts, the Cross Players, so people are aware, we've made that one of the games of the month because it's gone free to play. So with like a load of the Patreons and stuff, we've been playing that between us all, and it's been so much fun. We played a load last night, and I was with someone who's much better than me and scored pretty much every goal, but I scored one goal at the end, and I was just like, yes!
I think I saw that. They put that on Twitter. That was like, that was an incredible goal. I was like, that's
it was
the
so annoying because in the clip as well, Carl afterwards was like, oh, first goal of the night from Nathan. And I was like, it's actually my second goal of the night, but...
Oh, yeah. What a goal, though. What a goal. Yeah, so good. Oh, man, I love that game. It's so addictive, though. Like, the other night, I was like, I'll just play one game and just end up playing it for like 2 hours straight. Just like, it is definitely one of those games like one more.
I think however long they took to nail down those physics was worth it. I don't care if it was like 5-6 years, but that is one of the most satisfying physics engines you'll ever play around in.
Yeah, absolutely. John, what have you been playing this week?
I'm still trying to get all the stars in Mario 64.
Just 64?
I hate the game. I love it though, but I hate it.
Are you trying to do them in order chronologically?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. The camera and me don't get on. We're not good friends.
Well, have fun with Sunshine.
Yeah, I know. I like
and
Sunshine.
Galaxy.
When I was a kid, I never finished Mario 64. So for me, this is like coming across these levels for the first time. I finished Sunshine. I loved it when I was a kid. I loved the GameCube. But
me too. But
I kind of skipped out on the N64 in quite a big way because I was a PlayStation kid. Gulp. So this is my first time doing the later levels. I mean, I played the initial ones, but yeah, I'm still playing that. And I played a bit of downloaded Darkwood. It was on offer. It was like 60% off. It was a couple of quid. And that's a good game. I've played it on PlayStation actually. It's a good horror title. It's the season for spooky.
Get you in the mood for Halloween.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I can't wait for nobody to knock on our door because we're not allowed this year. So I'll just play Darkwood instead.
That is such good news. Not
so
just like
eerie.
Gangs of children go around with colds and flus knocking on your door.
Oh my gosh. That's so scary to think about. It's horrifying.
Yeah. Unless your outfit includes a mask.
Yeah.
Go around as Jason Voorhees.
That's true. It's also mask season.
Anyway.
I found with like Mario 64, like, because I played that, like, so I played it on the Nintendo 64, then played it on the 3DS. So it's almost like every level is like muscle memory. I almost like know what to do. I don't need to look at like guides or anything. I just kind of remember, my body like remembers everything.
I had to Google a couple of the stars. And I was like, how would anyone know this? I was thinking, like, this is nonsense. Like,
some of them are ridiculous. And if
I hate the one
playing for the first time. Oof.
Yeah, there's one, I can't remember the name of the level. It's like it's got the pyramid in the middle, but collecting the 8
that's a fun level.
Red coins, where you got to put the wing cap on and fly.
Oh my God, that one's so hard.
That took me for like forever to do.
I didn't get it. I kept going too low and then drowning in sand. And obviously, because the game's so obtuse, it sends you all the way out the castle when you game over. You have to go all the way back in. And I'm there like, I hate this game.
Yeah. That's the thing. I think, things like that you just accepted it when it first came up. But once you get a star and you get kicked out of the level, and then just have to jump back in again. It
just makes no sense.
I wish they would have kind of like changed that a little bit for the kind of the re-release.
It's quite a lot they could have done, really.
Yeah, unfortunately,
It's not start that.
We've already done that podcast. Nathan's done that podcast. So I guess that's it for another week in Nintendo Land. We hope you enjoy listening and watching this as much as we love making it. And we'd love to know what you thought all about the news this week. So if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment in the comments below. And if you just want to talk to us on Twitter, we're over at Switch Player Mag. Nathan, Anna, John, thank you so much for joining me once again.
You're welcome.
For having us.
Yeah, I had a great time.
It's been great. I think like very deep elements to the podcast, the light elements, fun. It's had everything.
There's a lot of drama. I love it.
Sorry.
We'll try and keep that.
I brought it from Twitter to here. I thought you guys could deal with it.
Anyway.
Need a little spice.
So we'll be back next Monday for lots more discussion on all the latest Nintendo news. But until then, see you later. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.